A wolf soulmate romance written by Clara Nightshade. Prologue. She ran from the noise of the world. He was the quiet waiting in the wild. When Eva Langley leaves behind the weight of city life, she never expects to fall, literally, into a mythic wilderness untouched by time. Injured, lost, and out of her element, she's rescued by the Wolfkin, a reclusive tribe who shift beneath moonlight and live by bone, breath, and instinct. At their heart is Rowan Wilder, the silent, scarred alpha who watches her with eyes like winter storms. He speaks little, but in his presence, Eva feels something awaken, a warmth in her chest, a fire she thought long gone. As snow thickens and old legends stir, Eva must learn to survive in a land that obeys no modern rule. But the deeper she falls into this world and into Rowan's orbit, the harder it becomes to remember the life she left behind. And when an ancient force rises from beneath the ice, threatening to unmake all things, Eva must choose: return to the safety she once knew, or burn with the one who taught her what it means to belong. A lyrical, romantic fantasy about love beyond boundaries, the hunger for connection, and the ember of self that survives even in the coldest wild. Chapter 1. Into the Unknown. The inn's keys were still clutched in Eva Langley's hand, as she locked the heavy wooden door one final time. The clink of brass against her palm echoed like punctuation in the cool morning fog. She stood for a long breath on the stone steps, face lifted to the drizzle, as if daring the grey sky to change its mind. It didn't. A gust tugged at her scarf hand-knit, sunflower yellow, too cheerful for her mood. She tucked it tighter and made her way to the battered van parked along the alley, its sides dusted with city grime. Inside, the last of her belongings were packed: a box of tea, an old pressure cooker, a lopsided houseplant, and for books she couldn't part with. No farewell letters, no tears. The city had become a dull screen behind glass, and Eva, who once poured tea for strangers with forced smiles and collected secrets behind the front desk, was done being polite. Her hands didn't tremble on the steering wheel. By the time she reached the foothills of the Grim Reach Range, the world had quieted into something ancient. Towering pines lined the dirt road like silence entries, branches heavy with dew. The horizon curved upward, crowned by jagged peaks draped in mist like old guards hiding their faces. She'd found the cabin online, a forgotten ranger's outpost turned part-time hermitage, owned by a hiker who left civilization for a commune in Costa Rica. No signal, no power grid, but clean water and plenty of firewood. For Eva that sounded like salvation. It took her 2 days to settle in. She didn't miss the sound of cell phones or the unnatural glow of LED screens. What unnerved her wasn't the silence, it was the way the wind seemed to whisper just beyond the tree line, low and unintelligible. She dismissed it as her mind detoxing from years of overstimulation, until the quake hit. It struck just before dawn, violent and raw, shaking the floorboards under her bed and rattling the claim Uggs off the shelves. She bolted upright, half dreaming, heart already racing. Books toppled, her lamp crashed, and outside, the ground growled like a living beast. She staggered to the door, flung it open, and was hit by a rush of cold air thick with dust and pine needles. The trees were swaying unnaturally, not just moving but twisting, groaning, their roots wrenching from the earth like pulled teeth. A rift opened before her eyes. It wasn't dramatic, not a Hollywood-style canyon, but a hairline fracture splitting the earth along a narrow path beyond the cabin. The fog seemed to rush toward it like water into a drain. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She should have stayed inside. Instead, drawn by a compulsion she couldn't name, Eva threw on her coat and boots, grabbed her flashlight and her grandmother's lighter, and stumbled out into the woods. The trail was unfamiliar, sharp-angled, veined with frost, strewn with fallen pinnacles and debris. She followed it anyway, drawn toward a distant sound she couldn't place. A low hum? A flute? Or maybe the wind again, teasing her. She realized too late she'd crossed into unfamiliar ground. The trees grew taller here. The sky, once dim gray, was now entirely hidden by interlocked branches, moss dripping like green lace from every bough. The underbrush was thicker too, resistant to her boots. She pressed forward until her flashlight flickered and died. That was when the bear came. The smell reached her first: damp fur, old blood, earth. She froze. The trees ahead parted with the slow inevitability of a nightmare, and the shape emerged hulking, broad-shouldered, black fur matted with leaves and dirt. Its eyes glowed oddly pale, like moonstone in shadow. It hadn't seen her yet. She took a breath and held it. Her pulse thrummed in her ears. The bear sniffed the air, then swung its head toward her. It saw her. Ava ran. Her feet hit the forest floor in a panic rhythm. Left, right, left, tripping over roots and slipping on moss. Branches tore at her coat, sliced her cheek. Behind her the bear bellowed, low and guttural, and the sound rattled her bones. She didn't scream. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because there was no one to hear it. Then the ground disappeared beneath her. She fell, tumbling down a slope slick with snow and leaf rot, her body scraping against stone and twig. At the bottom, she landed hard, gasping, arm twisted beneath her. The pain was hot, bright then dulled. She tried to move and winced. Above, the bear didn't follow. It stood at the ridge, peering down, then snorted and retreated. She could hear it lumbering away, the crashing sounds growing fainter. Ava lay there a moment longer, eyes closed, throat raw. Then, something else stirred. Not the bear. Something, quieter, breathless. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was a pair of boots. Not hiking boots. Hand-stitched leather with bone clasps. Ancient. She blinked. The boots were attached to legs. To a figure. A man. He crouched beside her. The firelight glinting off the edge of her fallen lighter must have caught his attention. He held it now, fingers turning it over curiously. The flame had gone out, but the brass shell gleamed faintly. His eyes met hers, pale silver, like the moon in winter. His face was lean, dusted with snow-flecked stubble, framed by hair the color of storm-touched bark. He didn't speak, just looked at her as if she were the strange thing here. Her voice broke, but it didn't matter. He wouldn't understand her, surely. He offered her the lighter. Ava stared at it, then at him. Something primal in her told her not to refuse. She reached with her an injured arm, fingers brushing his. Warm. He rose again, taller than she'd first thought, and gestured to the trees behind him. His gaze shifted toward the dark, then back to her. A question. She nodded, or hoped she did. And so, the man turned and began walking. Ava, injured and breathless, followed, because somehow she already knew the man with the silver eyes wasn't going to leave her alone in the dark. Not now. Not ever. Every step sent a jolt through Ava's right arm. She cradled it against her chest, teeth clenched, but didn't stop moving. The man walked ahead, silent and sure-footed, parting underbrush with the ease of someone born into this wilderness. The forest deepened around them. Moss hung thick from the branches like sleeping spirits. Strange stone carvings, wolfish faces, spiral symbols peeked out from tree trunks and cairns along the path. The air grew colder, and her breath began to fog. Yet her guide didn't falter. No words passed between them. Only looks. Short, assessing glances from him. Cautious, bewildered ones from her. Still, Ava sensed no threat in him, only curiosity, and something else she couldn't name. Eventually, the trees thinned, revealing a hollow cupped between hills. Smoke curled lazily from a peat at the center, and shadows moved between fur-covered tents like slow ghosts. A village. The wolf kin. They looked up as they entered. Some froze, others bared teeth, not in greeting. Children disappeared behind mothers. A few men, shirtless despite the cold, reached for spears carved from bone and obsidian. Ava stopped short. Her heart thudded wildly. Her knees weakened. She had imagined discovering some reclusive mountain folk, maybe even spiritual hermits, but these people looked like they belonged to a myth. Faces streaked with earth paint, hair in braids, dreadlocks, or loose tangles. Some wore pelts stitched with sinew. One woman had a raven feather cloak, but it wasn't their clothes that unsettled her. It was their eyes. Silver, golden, wolfish. The man, her guide, stepped forward and raised a hand. A single word left his lips, sharp and fluid. Trinear. Silence fell. An older man approached, grayer than the rest but still broad and solid as an oak. He studied Ava with narrowed eyes, then addressed the younger man in their guttural language. Words passed back and forth like thrown knives, quick, tense, urgent. Ava stood very still. Then, the elder's eyes locked onto her. Human, he said at last in accented but unmistakable English. Ava's breath caught. Why, yes, she managed. No welcome here. His voice was low, final. I didn't come on purpose, she said, trying not to sound too afraid. There was a quake. I fell into the woods. The elder raised a hand. Not place for your kind. She flinched but held her ground. I didn't ask for this, but I'm injured, cold. I don't have anywhere else to go. Something flickered behind the elder's gaze, skepticism, then recognition of the arm she kept close. His jaw tightened. Then he turned and snapped something in their tongue. Two younger women approached. One looked barely 20, the other much older with white streaks in her raven black hair. The older one's expression was unreadable. The younger one, curious and bright-eyed, met Ava's gaze without fear. The elder nodded toward her. Lena will tend you. One night. No more. Ava exhaled slowly. Thank you. The man who found her still standing nearby watched this exchange with quiet intensity. He hadn't spoken again, but his presence felt like a tether. The elder seemed to notice. Rowan, he said, addressing him sharply. Go. Rowan. So that was his name. He hesitated for a beat, then gave her one last glance before turning and disappearing into the shadows of the camp. Ava sat in a round tent stitched with animal hide and bone. The air smelled of herbs and ash. A fire crackled in a central pit, and a kettle boiled with something bitter and green. Lena approached with a bowl of warm water and soft cloth. You fell? She asked gently. Ava nodded. Rolled down a slope. Landed on my arm. Lena made a sympathetic sound and began washing away dirt and dried blood. Her hands were deft, warm. Not break, just hurt bad. You speak English? Little. Elders say I learn. For world outside. Ava nodded. Thank you, Lena. The girl smiled. She dressed Ava's arm with crushed roots, and wrapped it in fur-lined linen. The older woman silent as smoke occasionally passed something to Lena, or muttered a phrase in their language. Later, when Ava was alone, curled under thick pelts, she stared at the tent's ceiling. Shapes danced in the firelight. She replayed the day again and again. The quake, the bear, Rowan. His silver eyes haunted her more than the bear's snarl. She should have been terrified, but instead, she felt disoriented, like she'd stepped through a mirror into a different world, one she wasn't supposed to see. A flicker of warmth crept into her chest. She clutched the lighter, the one he picked up, and returned to her. Its metal casing was scratched now, but intact. She didn't sleep much. By morning, snow dusted the tents like powdered sugar. The air bit deep. Ava emerged slowly, arms stiff, stomach growling. She'd eaten nothing since the quake. A few villagers stared as she walked toward the fapit, clutching her coat around her. Whispers passed. Some looked curious, others wary. She found Rowan there. He was crouched by the fire, sharpening a blade carved from stone and wood. He didn't look up when she approached. She cleared her throat. Rowan? His head tilted slightly, but still no reply. She tried again. Thank you for helping me. He glanced up at last. His gaze was calm, unreadable. Then he nodded once. That simple motion made something unclench in her chest. She lowered herself to the log beside him, careful of her arm. So this is your home? He didn't answer, but he tapped the earth with his blade hilt and pointed to the nearby woods, then to the sky, then to the fire. Oh, he said. She smiled faintly. You mean all of it? He looked at her, and this time, she saw a trace of amusement in his eyes. He reached for something in the snow, drew a rough circle with his knife, then a smaller dot within it. He tapped the dot. You. She blinked. I'm in the middle? He tapped the circle. Perk. A pause. Then he drew a jagged line cutting through the circle. Ava stared. Separation. He didn't answer, but she understood. She was the dot inside the circle, yet not truly part of it. Not yet. She sat back, exhaling a slow, cold cloud. I don't know how to fix that. Rowan said nothing, but he looked at her a long time. Then he sheathed his blade, stood, and offered her a strip of dried meat. It wasn't an answer, but it was a beginning. Chapter 2 Lessons of the Wild. Ava woke to the sound of wind pressing against the tent walls like a restless spirit. Outside, the forest rustled in its sleep, snow settling over pine boughs in delicate flurries. Inside, warmth clung to the furs she lay beneath, but her breath still fogged the air. Her arm throbbed less today. She rose slowly, pulled on the deerskin-lined coat Lena had left folded beside her, and stepped out into the camp. The village pulsed with quiet motion, women carrying baskets of roots, men hauling pelts or sharpening tools, children weaving pine needles into cord. Ava was ignored by most. Some stared, others muttered, but no one approached, except for Lena, who appeared with a shallow bowl of soup and a lopsided smile. Hot, she said, nodding at it. Eat. Good. Ava took it with grateful hands. The broth smelled like onion and something wild, maybe nettle. Thanks. It smells edible. Lena laughed, short and bright. Not poison. Promise. Ava smiled despite herself. There was something profoundly grounding in being the outsider, the one who didn't speak the language, didn't understand the rules, couldn't offer anything in return. In the city, she built walls of politeness and professionalism. Here, she had only honesty and hunger. She found a quiet place near the fire and sat down to eat. Rowan wasn't there today. Instead, a weary boy with sun-colored hair and a scarred jaw was tending the flames. He glanced at her once, said nothing, and went back to stacking wood. Lena joined her again, kneeling to add more bark chips to the fire. You trade? She asked after a moment. Ava blinked. Trade? Lena pointed to Ava's waist at the belt pouch she still wore, though now faded and scuffed. Something. For food, like lighter. Ava opened the pouch and rummaged inside. Most of her things were useless: a chapstick, herbs, a tiny tin of mints. She held up the tin. This? Lena popped the lid, sniffed, and smiled. Sweet. Good. She nodded. Yes. Ava handed it over, still baffled. So I'm trading mints for soup? Everything trade, Lena said. You stay, you learn. Ava swallowed her last mouthful of broth, considering. Is that how I pay for being here? Lena tilted her head. No coin. No number. Only need. A need-based system. Ava remembered her economics classes in college barely. It sounded utopian on paper, but here it was life. She nodded slowly. Okay, I want to learn. Lena beamed. Come, she said, standing. We make fire. They led her beyond the village into a clearing, where smoke curled from the blackened remains of an old fire ring. Lena knelt in the snow, brushing it aside with experienced hands. She placed dried bark, a bird's nest of kindling, and a few small sticks in a practiced pile. Ava watched, fascinated. No matches? Lena grinned and shook her head. She pulled a stone from a leather pouch and a piece of curved iron. With a sharp motion, she struck them together, sending sparks into the dry grass. Nothing happened. Again, sparks, faint smoke, then flame. Ava's breath caught. That's incredible. Lena handed her the tools. You try. It took Ava 10 minutes and a scraped knuckle, but she managed it. When the dry grass finally flared to life, she laughed aloud, giddy, triumphant. I did it. Lena clapped her hands. Good. Firekeeper now. Ava's cheeks flushed with warmth, not just from the flame, but from something deeper. Approval. Belonging. A low growl interrupted them. Ava turned sharply and froze. A gray wolf stood just beyond the tree line. Not a man in animal form, but an actual wolf, with thick fur and golden eyes. It didn't move, just stared. Lena's expression sobered. Watch us, she murmured. Watch us, they guard. Listen, see if you're safe. Ava slowly crouched beside the fire, keeping her gaze level. The wolf cocked its head, then padded silently away, swallowed by trees. Lena exhaled. You passed. Ava swallowed hard. That was a test. Lena nodded solemnly. Many tests. Always. Ava stared into the flames. Somewhere inside her, the city girl who had once mastered the espresso machine and scoffed at wilderness survival was beginning to crack. Not shatter but shift. The fire she'd lit felt like more than a flame. It was a marker. She was here. She was surviving. And she was being watched. Later that afternoon, Rowan returned. Ava was hauling wood from a split stack near the edge of the camp. Her injured arm cradled awkwardly as she worked. She didn't hear him approach. He was quiet like snowfall, but when she looked up, he was there. His eyes dropped to her arm. Then the firewood. You help, he said simply. She nodded. I need to. He reached out and took the bundle from her gently, as if testing her limits. She let him, for once not arguing. I learned it to make fire today, she offered. He nodded once. Good. A pause. Then he pointed to the edge of the woods, to a small outcropping of rock. Rock? Ava hesitated, then nodded. Yes. They left the camp behind, climbing a narrow slope dusted with snow. From the top, the land opened wide, endless pines, jagged peaks dusted white, clouds brushing low like wool blankets. The wind tugged at her coat, but she didn't mind. Rowan stood beside her in silence. After a while he spoke. You won't go back? Ava looked up at him. To my world, he nodded. She hesitated. I don't know. Rowan's jaw tightened. Hard to stay. I didn't think I'd last a day, she admitted softly. He looked at her, then really looked. But you did. She met his gaze, heart thudding. Yes. A long silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Something had changed. Not spoken aloud, but present. Felt. Rowan reached into his coat and pulled something out. Her lighter. He'd kept it. He held it out to her again, like a ritual. This time, when their fingers brushed, neither pulled away. That night, the wind returned stronger, colder, curling beneath the tents like a thing alive. Ava lay under the pelts Lena had layered over her, staring at the dancing shadows on the ceiling. her lighter warm in her hand. She hadn't lit it. She didn't need to. The fire outside still burned. Rowan had stayed at the outcrop long after she'd left, unmoving, watching the ridgelines with the vigilance of a sentinel. She hadn't asked what he saw in the distance, whether he waited for something or someone to return. Something told her it wasn't her place. But when she looked back just once halfway down the slope, he was still watching her, not the trees, not the wind. Her by morning, the snow had thickened. It piled against the tents and clung to the eaves like lace, glinting faintly in the early light. Ava's fingers were stiff, her breath fogging the inside of her cloak. Lena greeted her with a bundle of rawhide gloves and a stone basin of cold water. "Today," Lena said with a mischievous glint in her eye, "you learn wash." Ava blinked. "Wash?" Lena pointed toward a stream past the trees. "Clothes, blankets, body." "Oh God," Ava groaned. "Do I look that bad?" Lena grinned. "Smell worse." Ava let out a laugh. "Rond real. All right. Teach me how not to offend the wolves." They carried baskets of linen, pelts, and bark soap to the stream that cut through the far side of the village. The water ran swift beneath a crust of ice, clear as glass. It sung bright in the cold air. Ava plunged her hands in and hissed. "Are you trying to kill me?" "No," Lena said sweetly. "Just make you stronger." Ava took the challenge and began scrubbing fur with bark shavings and icy water, until her fingers were red and trembling. She splashed water on her face and immediately regretted it. But by the time they finished, her cheeks were flushed, her limbs warm from effort, and her spirits high. Something about working alongside Lena, exchanging fragments of words and laughter, filled the ache in her chest that silence had left. They laid the wet cloth over lines strung between trees and returned to the village, hands stained with lichen and soaproot. That afternoon, Rowan came to her again. He found her kneeling near the fire, feeding twigs into the flame. She looked up startled, but didn't stand. He crouched beside her, motioning toward her hands. "Fire," he said, then pointed to his own chest. "Life." Ava blinked. "You mean, fire keeps you alive?" He nodded. She hesitated. "What about you? Your wolf form, does it fear fire?" He paused. Then, very slowly, he shook his head. "Not fear. Respect." His voice was low, rough around the edges, like river stones. It was the first time she heard more than a word or two from him. His tongue wrapped around English with hesitation, but strength. "You speak more than you let on," she murmured. A slow smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Listen more than speak." She felt her cheeks flush and pretended to poke the fire. He sat with her for a while, his silence companionable. Eventually he handed her something, a small bundle wrapped in bark twine. Inside was a handful of dried berries and a square of something that looked like flatbread. "For you," he said. She looked up. "Why?" "You work. You try. You not run." Ava swallowed around a sudden lump in her throat. "I was afraid." He tilted his head. "Still?" She thought about it. The bear, the quake, the wolves, the way she'd cried quietly under the fur her first night, wondering if she'd gone mad. Then she shook her head. "Not as much." He nodded once, then added, "Fear good. Teach." "Teach what?" "To live." As the sun sank lower and the shadows stretched longer, Elder Viren summoned a gathering. Rowan's voice had traveled. News of the outsider learning, working, adapting it unsettled some. A circle of villagers formed around the main fire pit, their breath plumbing like smoke, their eyes sharp and wary. Ava stood beside Lena, who squeezed her arm once. Viren addressed the group in his native tongue first, then turned to Ava. "You've been fed, sheltered, watched." Ava straightened her spine. "And I'm grateful." He ignored the interruption. "The wild is not your world. We are not your kind, and yet you stand here still." "I didn't choose to fall here," Ava said, voice clear, "but I choose to try, to learn." Murmurs passed through the crowd like dry grass catching flame. Some looked away, others stared harder. Rowan stepped forward. "I choose," he said simply. "She stays." Viren's gaze narrowed. "You speak for the pack." "I lead them," Rowan replied, voice quiet but firm. "Not with fear, with truth." There was a pause. Then Dame unstepped from the edge of the circle, tall, dark-eyed, a scar like a lash curling across his collarbone. He bowed his head slightly to Rowan, then looked at Ava. "She gave me food when no one did. Let her stay." Ava blinked. Damon had never spoken to her before. His presence was like shadow, always nearby, never interfering. More murmurs. Then Viren, with a deep breath, nodded once. "She earns her place. For now." Ava exhaled shakily. Rowan glanced at her, his silver gaze steady. You stay, he repeated, as if the words themselves could root her here. She nodded, and for the first time, she believed it might be true. That night, while the stars turned slowly above the pines, Ava sat beside the fire with Rowan. The wind hissed through the needles above them, and the fire cracks softly between them. She pulled her knees to her chest, watching sparks rise into the blackness. I thought I came here to escape, she whispered. Rowan said nothing, but he listened. But now it feels like I came here to remember. Remember what? He asked, voice low. She turned to him, firelight dancing in her eyes. Who I was. Who I still am. Rowan looked at her for a long moment. Then, gently, he reached over and touched her injured hand, and held it, not as a claim, but as a quiet promise. Chapter 3 The Bear Clan's Shadow. Ava first heard the flute at dawn. It wasn't the sharp, airy whistle of a bird or the creak of branches swaying in the wind. This sound was deliberate, slow, haunting, with a melody that rose and fell like breath drawn through bone. It stirred something in her chest she didn't know was there, something old and cautious. She sat up from her pile of furs and rubbed the sleep from her eyes. Outside the tent, morning fog wound through the trees like smoke, and the smell of wet pine hung heavy in the air. Lena was already awake, braiding her hair by the fire. You here? She asked softly, not looking up. Ava nodded. What is it? Lena hesitated. Not ours. Bear Clan. Ava's skin pricked lead. She remembered the map Rowan had etched into the earth one night, the jagged lines between territories, the places he marked with caution, with silence. The Bear Clan lands bordered theirs across the western ridge, separated by a salt river that ran deep and dark. What are they doing this close? Ava asked, pulling on her boots. Lena's mouth pressed into a thin line. Show strength. Test wind. Always flute first. Always flute, then what? Depends who hears. Before Ava could respond, Rowan emerged from the forest, eyes narrowed, snow melting against his shoulders. He went straight to the fire without a word, crouched and picked up a burning brand, watching the flames dance. Ava crossed the clearing. You hear it too? He nodded. Scout. Alone. Why? To see. She frowned. Are they hostile? Rowan's jaw ticked. Sometimes. Ava glanced toward the woods, where the flute had long since faded. A chill brushed her spine, not just from the cold, but from something unspoken in the way Rowan's shoulders remained taut, his every movement measured. What do we do? We wait. Later that day, Ava followed Rowan and Dame down a game trail winding through thick underbrush. Snow gave way to trampled leaves and broken branches. Animal tracks crossed over each other in the wet-soiled air. Hair, something large and clawed. They came to a place where the forest opened into a shallow ravine, the stream cutting through the center like a vein. There, among the trees, was a sign. A long pole jammed into the earth. Hung from it, rattling softly in the breeze, were bones, animal, maybe human, carved with spirals and teeth marks. At the top, bound with sinew, was a crude flute. Ava swallowed. This is a message, isn't it? Rowan didn't answer. Damon stepped forward, voice low. It means they've seen you. The outsider. Ava's heart thudded. Me? You were not meant to cross, Rowan said. You are rare. Ava stared at the totem. The wind played the bones like a chime, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. They want to meet, she asked. Rowan met her gaze. Maybe. Or trade. Or test. Test? They look for weakness. Sometimes ask for things not theirs. Damon spat into the dirt. They asked for me. Once. Ava turned to him. Damon rarely spoke about himself. He lived on the edge of camp, half shadow, half watchdog. She hadn't known why until now. You were from the Bear Clan. Damon's gaze didn't waver. Not born. Taken. Rowan's hand briefly touched his shoulder. Solidarity. Brotherhood. Pain shared without a word. Ava looked at the flute again. What happens if we ignore it? They come back, Rowan said. Closer. Louder. She glanced back toward camp. And if we answer? Rowan didn't reply. But in his silence, Ava heard the truth. They would have to choose sooner or later. That evening, Rowan called a fire council. Unlike the previous gathering, this one was tense before it began. Hunters returned early from the woods. Elders circled like wolves testing the wind. Even Lena looked grim. Viren spoke first, voice sharp. They test our borders. And for what? Curiosity. They see a crack in the stone. Me, Ava said, stepping forward before she could lose her nerve. I'm the crack. Some gasped. Others frowned. Rowan stood beside her. She speaks true. She brings change, Viren growled. And danger. She brings knowledge, Damon countered. And aid. If not for her, I'd still be under bear chains. That shifted the air. Murmurs rippled. Lena nodded quietly, and others followed suit. Rowan raised his voice, not loud, but deep, steady. I seek to see if we're weak. We are not. We stand. With her. Silence. Then Viren leaned forward, eyes like storm clouds. Then let her prove it. Ava stiffened. Prove it how? There will be a trade circle at moonrise, he said. The bear clan comes. They will speak. You will listen. And if they demand something impossible, then you will learn what it is to be one of us. The words landed with finality. Ava glanced at Rowan. His gaze was unreadable, but she saw something flicker there, pride, concern, maybe fear. For her, moonrise came swift and silver, at the edge of the Salt River, where trees bent low and the land dipped into shadows. Ava stood beside Rowan and Damon. Behind them, a quiet wall of wolfkin warriors, silent, cloaked, alert. Across the clearing, torches lit orange halos in the dark. The bear clan arrived. Their leader rode a black-furred bear, silent and towering. Beside him, two men played low, winding tunes on bone flutes. Their cloaks were lined with stitched cotton, their bodies painted with soot and ochre, but it was their eyes that unsettled Ava, wide, flat, as if something behind them had been long buried. The bears stopped yards from the wolfkin line. The leader dismounted. He was tall and thick, with knotted hair and rings in his nose. He smiled at Ava, like she was something to be weighed and bartered. So, he said in clear, slow English, the outsider. Ava forced herself to stand tall. I'm Ava Langley. He grinned. We heard you fell, and did not break. She didn't reply. The leader looked around, gaze settling on Rowan. You share fire with her. Let her speak for you now. Rowan said nothing. Ava took a breath. What do you want? The bear leader stepped forward. Curiosity. Trade. Maybe a taste of what's new. He smiled again, too wide. A thing from your world. A token. Ava reached into her coat. She had only one thing left from the city, her grandmother's lighter, polished brass engraved with initials long faded. She held it up. This? The bear leader's eyes gleamed. He took it, flicked it open. The flame hissed. He closed it, then looked at her sharply. A knowledge. What kind? You teach us. Like you teach them. Ava hesitated. And what do you give? He pulled out a pouch. Inside sweet potatoes, dried fruit, and a small jar of ointment. For you're sick, he said. And something else. He gestured. A young man stepped forward, bound in leather cuffs. Ava's breath caught. It was Damon's brother. Damon did not move, but Ava felt the shift in him, like ice breaking under pressure. His hand clenched at his side, every muscle taut beneath the wolf pelt cloak he wore. The young man across the clearing, barely older than a boy, kept his eyes downcast. His wrists, bound in leather, were reddened, his cheeks hollowed by hunger. Ava looked between them. The resemblance stark and sudden, same sharp cheekbones, same proud curve to the chin, though time and pain had weathered them differently. The bear leader's smile was pure provocation. A gift. Family. Yes. Damon stepped forward, but Rowan's arm barred him. Why? Ava demanded, her voice slow but steady. Why give him now? The bear leader shrugged. We trade, we test, we return what was lost, and we see what is made of it. You kept him? Damon growled, his voice a blade. Why now? The bear leader turned his gaze to him. You were a wolf cub with broken teeth. He is not you. Rowan growled softly. The warriors behind him shifted. Ava stepped forward, holding out her hands. What do you want for him? The bear leader turned back to her. A promise. You teach us, like you teach them. She hesitated. What kind of teaching? Fire, tools, ideas. His voice was silky. The things you know. And if I don't, he smiled coldly, then we keep him. Or worse. Ava's pulse thundered in her ears. She looked to Rowan. He didn't speak, but his gaze said, this is your choice. Ava exhaled and stepped forward. Let him go, and I will come to your village. 3 days. No more. Rowan's shoulders tensed. The bear leader studied her a long moment, then nodded once. He gestured to one of his men, who approached the bound boy and sliced the leather cords with a bone blade. The boy staggered forward. Damon caught him, arms folding around his brother with a sound that was not a word, just a broken exhale from a man who hadn't allowed himself to hope. Rowan stepped between Ava and the bear leader. 3 days, he said flatly. No more. The bear leader agreed, already turning to mount the bear again. Then she is ours to teach. They left like shadows, torches swallowed by forest, flutes silent now. Ava stood still as the snow, her breath shaking in her lungs. Back at the wolfkin village, The fire burned brighter than ever. Rowan didn't speak to her at first. He stood alone near the edge of camp watching the sky, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable. Ava approached, stepping lightly. "You were angry." He shook his head slowly. "Not angry. Afraid." That surprised her. "Of what?" "That you will go," he said, "and not return." She blinked. "I made a deal." "You did. But you don't trust them." "I do not." He looked at her, silver eyes soft but darkened by something heavier than fear. "They want to learn, but not only to build, to take." Ava's breath caught. "You think I made a mistake?" He didn't answer. "I couldn't let Damon lose him," she said. "You know that." "I know." Rowan's voice was calm, but tight, like a bowstring stretched too far. "But I cannot protect you there. I don't need protection." "You do," he said simply. "Everyone does." Ava sat on a low stump beside him. "I've made it this far." His gaze flicked to her bandaged arm. "With help." She smiled faintly. "Yes, with yours." For a long while, they sat in silence. The wind sang through the pines above. The fire popped and hissed. Then Rowan spoke again. "When you go, take this." He pulled something from the folds of his coat, a thin stone medallion etched with a spiral wolf's head. "For luck. For memory," he said. "So you are not alone." Ava took it gently, thumb brushing the carved spiral. "Thank you." He nodded, but didn't meet her gaze. The next morning, Damon came to her. He stood in her tent doorway, awkward, his brother sleeping behind him in a borrowed bedroll. His eyes were red, but his spine was straight. "I owe you," he said. Ava shook her head. "You don't." He stepped forward and offered her a blade, short, curved, bone-handled. "Then take this. For the Bear Clan." She hesitated. "You think I'll need it?" "I know you will." He didn't elaborate, just left her with the blade and a look in his eyes that felt like a farewell. When the sun broke the next day, Ava packed what little she had: the blade, the lighter, the medallion, a pouch of dried berries, and the clothes she'd washed in the stream. Her fingers trembled only once when she tucked the stone medallion under her collar. Lena hugged her tightly. Damon bowed once, and Rowan said nothing at all. He stood near the trail, eyes shadowed, mouth a line as she approached. "I'll be back," she told him. His silence was heavy. "I will," she insisted. He took a long breath. "If they ask something you cannot give, walk away." "I know." He looked down, then met her eyes again. "You are not one of them." She nodded. "Not yet. Not ever." He stepped closer. His fingers brushed her cheek, barely a touch, but enough to make her breath hitch. 3 days, he said. Ava smiled. 3 days. Then she turned and walked into the trees, toward the Bear Clan and the next trial waiting beyond the flute's call. The wilderness closed behind her with a sigh, and she did not look back. Chapter for the teeth beneath honey. Ava crossed the Salt River before noon. The air shifted the moment her boots touched the far bank. It was subtle, like walking into a room where someone had just whispered your name. The wind was warmer here, the trees older and scarred with strange symbols. Even the light felt off, filtered amber through moss-laden boughs, as if the forest held its breath, watching. The Bear Clan didn't wait long to show themselves. A young woman stepped from the trees barefoot despite the cold, her face painted with ash swirls, a carved wooden flute hanging from her hip. She didn't speak. She simply stared at Ava for a long moment, then gestured for her to follow. Ava did. They walked through twisting forest paths, past fields of low-growing crops, half-sunken frost-sweet potatoes, cotton tufts like snowdrifts, winter squash nestled between furrows. Smoke rose in thin threads from the treetops ahead. The Bear Clan village was different from the Wolfkins. Where the Wolfkin lived in hide tents arranged in open hollows, the Bear Clan favored earthen mounds and lean TOS braced with scrap metal and woven reeds. Fire pits burned low and constant, not for warmth but for signaling. The scent of smoke, soil, and dried meat clung to everything. Children peeked from behind wooden posts. Women paused in their weaving. Eamon, sharpening a bone sickle, glanced at Ava and smiled broadly. They'd been expecting her. The woman led her to a large half-circle lodge near the center of the camp, flanked by standing stones shaped like twisted bears rising on hind legs. Inside, the fire burned hot, and the bear leader, called Calvi, she'd learned from Damon, sat on a pile of furs, his elbows resting on his knees. He rose when she entered. "Ava Langley," he said smoothly, "daughter of smoke, walker of two worlds." "I'm just a former innkeeper," Ava replied flatly, "and I'm here because I gave you my word." Calvi chuckled. "And we are honored by your fire." He gestured for her to sit across from him. "You will teach us." She remained standing. "First, you'll promise Damon's brother is free, unharmed." Calvi-K gave a mock bow. You have my word. You'll find no broken chains in this camp. Ava didn't believe him, but she sat. Another woman entered, laying down a stone bowl filled with roots, boiled meat, and something resembling porridge. Ava took it, hands careful. You will stay here for 3 days, Calvi-K said. Sleep in the elder den. Teach what you know, and listen. Listen to what? Calvi-K smiled faintly. To the ground. It has much to say. The first lesson Calvi-K demanded was fire. Ava crouched beside a boy no older than 10, showing him how to stack kindling in a teepee shape. His hands were calloused but deft, eyes shot with hunger for warmth perhaps, or for understanding. Around them a group of children watched in silence. She lit the fire with a spark stone and dry moss. The flames caught, rising quickly, and the children leaned closer, murmuring, "Why is this special?" One asked. "We already have fire." "Because it's faster," Ava said. "It uses less effort, and the shapes see how it pulls in air." They watched. One girl began to mimic her, arranging her own stack with care. By evening, several small fires danced across the clearing, and the children laughed, chasing one another with sticks of smoking bark. Ava sat back, dizzy from the smoke and the weight of watching eyes. Adults gathered around the fires, less playful, more cautious. "Why give them our ways?" a woman asked under her breath. Calvi-K appeared beside Ava, arms crossed. "Because your ways are changing. Because change is already here." Ava felt like a kindling spark herself, tiny, dangerous, and watched. That night, they fed her roasted squash, a bitter herbal brew, and meat she didn't recognize. She chewed cautiously, nodding when asked if she liked it. Calvi-K watched her through the fire, saying little. Afterward, he gestured for her to walk with him. They moved through the village in silence, down winding paths between drying racks of fish and bundles of herbs strung from trees. The moon filtered through the canopy in slivers. "You think we are cruel," Calvi-K said eventually. Ava didn't answer. He smiled. "We are, but not without purpose." She finally spoke. "Purpose doesn't make slavery justifiable." Calvi-K stopped walking. "We are born with teeth. The world is made of hunger and need. What we take we repay." Eventually, Damon wouldn't agree. Damon ran, Calvi-K said, not unkindly. He ran from the wild into the arms of wolves. "We do not forget those who run, nor those who return." "I'm not here to return," Ava said. "I'm here to honor my word." He turned, expression unreadable in the moonlight. "You do not yet see the value of your fire, but we do." He stepped closer. "Tell me, Ava, have you ever been in charge of something larger than yourself?" She thought of her in the quiet days, the ledgers, the gentle tyranny of online reviews. "I managed a business," she said. He chuckled. "Then you understand the weight of mouths to feed, fires to tend. You understand that kindness must sometimes be bartered." She stared at him. "Kindness isn't kindness if you expect something in return." Calvi-K looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "Perhaps you are here to teach more than you realize." That night, Ava lay in a low earthen den, her body curled beneath wool blankets, the firelight from the central hearth casting flickers across the dirt walls. She couldn't sleep. She missed the howling of wolves, the scent of pine, ruins, silence. And yet, here she was safe, fed, her promise intact. But at what cost? Outside, a flute began to play again. Coaxing, winding between the trees like a siren's breath. Ava closed her eyes, and saw silver rise in the dark. On the second day, Ava was taken to the smokehouse. It's at on the western edge of the Bear Clan camp, a low structure of stone and packed mud, its roof venting a steady stream of aromatic smoke. Inside, slabs of meat hung from wooden racks, while coals smoldered below. A woman named Mary, hair tightly braided and arms corded with muscle, led Ava in with a single nod. "You teach fire," Mary said. "Now teach meat." Ava blinked. "You want to preserve food." Mary pointed to a pile of rockhuts. "Make ready. Winter come." Ava had preserved food before, dried mushrooms for the inn's kitchen, vacuum-sealed fruit in a previous life, but not like this. Still, she learned quickly. She observed how Mary packed herbs into slits in the meat, rubbed ash along the bone ends, and looped each cut with tough grass cords. The trick, Mary said with a sharp grin, was not to remove the wild entirely but tame it enough to last. By midday, Ava's hands were stained crimson, her nails caked with fattened salt. Mary said nothing, but passed her a wooden cup of sour beer and a firm clap on the back. Outside, the Bear Clan watched her more openly now. Children ran past with sticks and hollered phrases she couldn't catch. A group of younger warriors practiced grappling techniques in the snow, their movements tight and brutal. She caught Calvik watching from his usual perch near the central hearth, ever silent, ever calculating. Eva felt it building the weight of their expectations, of the unspoken debt they believed she owed for the boy they'd released. That evening, Calvik summoned her again. This time they met not in the central lodge, but on a cliffside that overlooked the frozen river. The sky was bruised purple with dusk, and distant clouds clung to the horizon like waiting beasts. "You work well," Calvik said, standing beside her. "Even Damon never worked this hard." Eva crossed her arms. "That's because Damon wasn't given a choice." Calvik chuckled. "We all have choices. Some are just narrower." She turned toward him, her breath visible in the cold. "What do you really want from me?" He was quiet a moment. Then he said, "Understanding." "You're testing me," she said. "Everything here, your lessons, your games, even your food. You're weighing what I am." "Of course," Calvik said. "You walk with wolves, you think like a builder, and you still remember how to light a fire with your own hands. That makes you rare." Eva looked out at the forest beyond. "You want to change." "We want to survive," Calvik corrected. "Winter comes harder every year. The high mount close their borders. The salt lakes flood. The world is shifting, and we must learn new shapes to fit." She turned to him. "Then why hold people like Damon's brother captive?" Calvik's eyes glinted. "Because sometimes knowledge comes with a price." "No," Eva said, "sometimes it's stolen." His face hardened. They stood in silence for a long moment, the wind rising. Then Calvik said, "You return tomorrow, but you will leave something behind." Eva's stomach turned. "What?" "A story," he said simply. "Tell us how your world fell." She frowned. "My world hasn't fallen." Calvik smiled. "Hasn't it?" That night, Eva sat by a small fire near the den where she slept. Children gathered close, eyes wide in the flickering light. Word had spread Eva would tell a tale. She chose one from her childhood. A city swallowed in snow, buses frozen on highways, neighbors sharing meals through apartment walls. How her father lit a fire in the bathtub with scraps of old furniture. How the dark had brought out more kindness than light ever did. They listened without blinking. When she finished, one girl asked, "Do they still light fires in your city?" Eva hesitated. "No," she said finally. "Not like that." The girl's expression was unreadable, half wonder, half pity. At dawn, Eva prepared to leave. Mary handed her a pouch of dried meat and bark bread. One of the boys she taught fire to pressed a bundle of herbs into her palm. The flute-playing girl met her gaze from afar, then turned and vanished between trees. Calvik met her at the edge of the woods. 3 days, he said. No harm, no chains. Eva gave him a level look. "Thank you. You gave more than you know," he said. "Some of them, they dream now. Dreaming's not the same as changing." "No," he agreed, "but it's the first step." He stepped back, nodding once, and let her go. The walk back to the Wolfkin lands felt longer than before. The weight of the Bear clan clung to her, their smoke, their songs, their shifting morality. She could still hear the flute sometimes in the wind. By the time she reached the river crossing, snow had begun to fall again. She crossed without hesitation, and on the far bank, waiting just beyond the first pine, stood Rowan. His eyes swept over her face, her limbs, the way she walked. "You're late," he said, voice quiet. "Am I?" "Only by a few heartbeats." She smiled. "You counted?" I listened. He stepped forward, then stopped. "Are you harmed?" "No," she said, "not physically." He nodded slowly. They stood there for a long moment, saying nothing. Then Eva reached into her coat and pulled out the medallion he'd given her. "I kept this with me the whole time." His gaze softened. "And what did it say?" She looked up at him, snow catching in her lashes. "That I belong somewhere." His fingers reached out hesitant, then sure, brushing her cheek. "Here," he said, "you belong here." Eva closed her eyes, and let herself believe it. Chapter 5. Whispers in the wind. The snow did not stop for 2 days. It came in waves, soft at first, then fierce and blinding, blanketing the Wolfkin camp in white silence. Fires burned high and constant. Children were kept close to the hearths. Even the wolves, those who walked on 4 legs by night, huddled in their dens. Eva sat in Rowan's tent, helping Lena sort dried roots by candlelight. Her fingers moved slowly, still stiff from cold and fatigue, but her mind was far away back in the Bear clan's den, in Calvik's quiet demands, in the eyes of the children who had never known a world without barter and power plays. She'd left them behind, but not really. You dream while awake, Lena said softly, brushing a strand of hair from Ava's brow. Bad dreams. Ava shook her head. No, just heavy thoughts. Lena smiled faintly. That's what bad dreams become when they're older. Ava gave a weak laugh and returned to the roots. Outside, the wind picked up again, howling through the trees like a wounded animal. The fire snapped, throwing their shadows against the tent walls in jagged silhouettes. I don't like this wind, Lena whispered. It's peaks of change. Ava looked at her, unsettled. You think something's coming? I think something already has, Lena said. But we haven't seen its teeth yet. Rowan returned before dusk, snow dusting his shoulders and melting in his hair. He moved like a man carrying weight, his footsteps silent but resolute. He removed his cloak by the door, then crouched beside the fire, warming his hands. Ava sat across from him, studying his expression. You were scouting? She asked. He nodded. Tracks near the ridge. Not bear. Not wolf. Humans. Maybe. But wrong. He looked at her. They moved with silence. But not our silence. They left no scent. Ava felt a cold breath slip down her spine. You think outsiders? Not like you, Rowan said. Not with questions. With tools. She frowned. Modern? He didn't answer, but the word hung between them like smoke. Ava leaned forward. Could it be Blake? Rowan's brow furrowed. The one who hunts truth. Yes, the officer. He was sent to investigate disappearances near the Grim Reach. Rowan considered. Truth seekers often break what they touch. Ava shook her head. Blake's cautious. He's not cruel. But if he finds this place, if he tells others, Rowan didn't need to say what came next. He reached into a pouch and drew out a small piece of slate etched with an unfamiliar symbol, a spiral with 3 slashes through its center. Found this near the North Pass. Ava leaned in. What does it mean? It means someone is asking questions they don't know how to answer. That night, a meeting was called in the central gathering space. The snow muffled footsteps, but the fire burned hot, casting golden light on fur-lined faces and sharp eyes. Elder Viren sat with his cane braced across his knees, watching Ava like one might a puzzle missing a corner. Rowan stood at her side. We have signs, Rowan said, of watchers near the northern ridge. They move without scent, without fire. They may carry metal. A low growl passed through the gathered wolfkin. Ava stepped forward. It may be a man I know. A civil officer. He's searching for missing people like me. Viren's voice cracked the air. And if he finds us? Silence. Ava didn't have an answer. He will mark us, Viren said. Put us in books. Call us wild. Take what he wants. Call it law. Rowan said nothing. Ava spoke again. He may be an ally, but we don't know. Let me speak to him if he comes. You would betray us. Someone asked from the circle. No, Ava said, her voice sharp. But I understand the world he comes from. And you don't. Lena stepped into the firelight. She tells truth. Damon followed. And if we hide, we will be hunted anyway. Better to shape the storm than wait for it. The fire cracked. Vir unleaned back. Then we wait. And if the seeker finds us, Rowan's voice was ice. He will find Ava first. After the meeting, Rowan and Ava sat alone beneath the low-hanging boughs of a pine tree. Snow clung to the needles, falling in soft flurries around them. The air between them was heavy, not with cold, but with what hadn't been said. You would go to him, Rowan said quietly. If I must. You would leave again. Ava looked at him, heart aching. I would return. He looked away. And if you couldn't? She took a shaky breath. Then I'd find a way. Rowan's eyes met hers then, fierce and silver. I would follow. The words landed like a stone dropped into a still lake. She reached out, fingers brushing his. Even if the world you find is nothing like yours, I would follow, he said again. Even if it has no sky. At midnight, the winds shifted. Ava woke to the sound of distant thunder, not from a storm, but something else. A tremor. A mechanical grind muffled by distance. She rose and slipped into her coat, stepping outside. Rowan was already awake, standing at the edge of the woods, his hair tangled by the wind, his eyes fixed north. You hear it? She asked. He nodded. The mountain speaks. Ava followed his gaze, and in the far distance, barely visible through the veil of snow, a flicker of artificial light. Ava barely slept. The light faint and flickering as it was had planted itself in her mind like a seed, blooming questions she couldn't silence. Who was it, Blake? A rescue party? Or something worse? That glimmer of modern intrusion in this raw, sacred wilderness felt both familiar and horrifying. By dawn, the sky had gone steel gray. Snow fell in soft sheets, gentle but endless. Rowan met her by the main fire, where hunters had gathered to discuss patrols. He passed her a hot cup made from boiled pine needles and honey sap. It keeps the cold out, he murmured. Ava sipped it gratefully, its bitterness grounding. Is anyone going to investigate? Rowan nodded toward Damon. We go now. North Ridge. Ava straightened. I want to go. Rowan didn't flinch. Too dangerous. Then, more reason for me to go. He studied her, jaw tense. You seek someone? Yes, she said honestly, and I may be the only one he'll talk to. Behind them, Viren emerged from his tent like a weathered storm cloud, leaning hard on his carved cane. You would lead them to us, he growled. One outsider to another. Ava turned, steady. I would speak, not betray. Words bring roads. Roads bring fire. Rowan stepped forward, placing himself between them. She goes. With me. Viren's eyes narrowed. Then may the snow take only one of you. Ava didn't look away. We'll come back with answers. The North Ridge was a jagged ascent, the pines growing sparser as the altitude rose. The snow here had crusted over, and each step crunched underfoot. Daimon led them with his usual quiet intensity, knife sheathed at his hip, eyes scanning the horizon. The further they climbed, the more Ava noticed the changes. Broken branches, flat and underbrush, a snap length of red plastic cord man-made, modern. Her stomach twisted. They crested the ridge just before midday, where the trees opened to reveal a long, shallow basin coated in ice, and there half buried in the snow and brush was a trail camera. Rowan crouched beside it, brushing off the frost. Machine, he muttered, voice low. Ava stepped forward. It's solar-powered, probably motion-riggered. Dame uncircled the perimeter. 3 others, he said, pointing. One there, one by the rock, another near the cave. Ava frowned. A monitoring pattern. Rowan stood, expression cold. They know we are here, or they think we're bears, she said, or mountain wolves. No, he said, they know. Daimon raised a hand. There, smoke. They followed his gaze, and in the distance, a faint ribbon of smoke curled into the sky, not from wood or pinnacones, but something chemical, alien, synthetic. Rowan's face darkened. Fire without scent. Ava put a hand on his arm. That has to be Blake. He uses camp stoves. Rowan turned to her. Then we go. The camp was modest, a snow-stomped circle beneath a rock outcrop, shielded from the wind. A low synthetic tent. A tripod stand with a pan over the flame. A radio with a broken antenna. And crouched beside the fire, bundled in a navy parka and city-issue gloves, was Blake Thorne. He turned at the sound of their footsteps. His eyes widened. Ava? Her breath caught. Blake. He rose quickly, snow cascading off his coat. Holy hell, you're alive. She ran the last few steps and embraced him. The parka stiffened unfamiliar against her. He smelled like plastic and antiseptic in the faint musk of sweat. For a moment, the past rushed back, briefings and sterile rooms, her missing person report, everything she had fled. You're alive, he repeated, stepping back to look at her. Everyone thought. I know. He glanced past her to Rowan and Damon, both silent, both tense. His posture straightened. They're with you? Ava nodded. They saved me. Blake's brow furrowed. I was following heat signatures, weird terrain readings. And then I started finding carvings, bones, structures, tribes maybe, but off the maps. They're not on maps for a reason, Ava said quietly. Rowan stepped forward. You bring more? Blake blinked, surprised. You speak English. Enough, Rowan said. Blake raised both hands. No backup, just me. This is a solo recon black file. Ava frowned. You're not supposed to be here alone. Blake gave a tired smile. I wasn't supposed to be here at all. But after your case went cold, I kept pulling threads. Someone had to. Ava's throat tightened. And what did you find? Blake glanced toward the trees. A place not meant to be touched. Rowan's eyes narrowed. Then why stay? Blake looked at Ava. Because you were here. They sat together in the camp's edge while Damon kept watch. Rowan never saw the stood with arms crossed, protective and unreadable. Blake pulled a small, battered notebook from his coat. Inside were pages of sketches, transcriptions, terrain observations. Spiral symbols, he murmured, pointing to a drawing. Burn flutes, totems, totemic behavior, semi-literate or entirely oral culture. Ava leaned in. That's the Bear Clan. I think they're expanding, Blake said. Territory overlap, possibly some form of alliance system. And then there's the shifting patterns, weather anomalies, quakes. Ava's breath caught. The quake brought me here. Blake looked at her sharply. Gate theory? She nodded slowly. There's something called the Mountain Gate. The tribes speak of it like myth. but I don't think it's just a story. Blake leaned back. Then maybe that's what this is. A threshold. And something's trying to open it wider. Rowan spoke then. Some gates must remain closed. Ava looked at him. But if it's already open? His jaw flexed. Then we stand guard. As the sun dipped below the trees, Ava turned to Blake. You have to leave. He blinked. What? They won't stay hidden forever. The Bear clan knows there's more beyond the pines. If word gets out, if the mountain gate opens too wide, it's too late for silence, Blake said softly. The world is coming. I can't stop it, but I can decide what story they hear first. Ava studied him. Then tell the truth. That they are people, not monsters. Blake nodded slowly. And what about you? She looked to Rowan, who stood apart but not away. I belong somewhere else now. That night, Blake packed up his camp. Ava gave him a small bone carved at another curve. From the boy who once ran, she said, to remember what you found. Blake looked at her. And if I come back? Don't, Rowan said, but Ava touched Blake's shoulder. If you do, bring respect, or nothing at all. As Blake disappeared into the trees, his light fading like a dream, Ava felt something shift. Not an ending, a warning. And far behind them, the wind changed, carrying a whisper that the wolves were not the only ones watching. Chapter 6 Ashes Between Clans. Ava woke to the scent of smoke, not the dry, piney burn of morning fires or the comforting crackle of Rowan's hearth. This was darker, choked with damp ash, like something rotting beneath flame. She rose, heart already racing, and stepped outside. Above the village, a column of smoke twisted into the sky, black, heavy. Rowan stood at the edge of the ridge, his shoulders square, silver eyes narrowed against the rising haze. He didn't look back when she approached, but she felt the tension radiating off him like heat. What happened? She asked. They lit the high wood, he said quietly. A signal. The Bear clan. He nodded. Ava followed his gaze toward the far peaks. But they said no more trade. No more contact. What could they want now? Not want, Rowan said. Warn. Behind them, the village stirred. Children were ushered indoors. Warriors began checking bows, axes, the thick leather armor worn only during raids or defenses. Elder Viren emerged with a staff instead of his usual cane. Daemon appeared next, face grim, the eastern slopes burning. Forest gone in less than an hour. Ava's stomach turned. That's not just a signal. That's a threat. Rowan didn't reply. Instead, he turned toward the longhouse at the heart of the village. Call the council. Everyone. Inside the smoke-darkened meeting tent, the firelight danced off tired faces and sharp shadows. Viren sat heavily, his cane replaced by a carved spear. They burn the mountain, he said, and expect silence. Rowan stood at the center. We have options, but we must move before they move again. They will not strike openly, said Daemon. They'll let the fire do their speaking. Ava stepped forward. We need to know why they're doing this. Viren's gaze pinned her. You went to them. You saw their hungers. Perhaps they no longer want alliance. Perhaps they want everything. They fear the gate, Rowan said. Silence followed. Ava frowned. You believe that? Rowan nodded. Calvik knows the world is shifting. He wants to control what comes through it. Then he sees the gate not as a myth, she murmured, but a weapon. Viren let out a bitter laugh. And what do we hold against a myth? Spears. No, Rowan said. Knowledge. Ava met his eyes. The journals. That afternoon, they dug beneath the sacred stone. It's at near the eastern clearing where the ground sloped into a frost-hardened pond. Beneath the altar, hidden in a rue-trapped box, were the journals of Rowan's mother, pages worn with time, ink smudged by age and moisture. Ava's hands trembled as she lifted the first one. These are written in my language. Rowan crouched beside her, reverent. She came from your world, fell through the gate, stayed. Ava opened to a page covered in looping script and simple sketches, diagrams of stars, of mountain crests, of what looked like ritual circles. She studied this place, Ava whispered, documented it, maybe even found the gate. Rowan said nothing, but his fingers brushed a page where a rough drawing depicted a stone archway carved into a cliffside surrounded by spirals and flames. Ava tapped it. That's near the Salt Lake. I saw a similar formation while walking with Lena. Rowan nodded once. Then that is where we go. Daemon stepped closer. What if the Bear clan goes first? Then we meet them there, Rowan said, and we decide what to let through. They prepared quietly with the hush of those who've done it before. Daemon packed spears and fire sap cloth. Lena handed Ava a small pouch of smoke bombs made from crushed herbs and flint powder, simple tools, but effective. Rowan dressed in thick wolf-hide armor, his twin blades strapped across his back. He didn't speak as Ava adjusted the strap on his shoulder, but when their eyes met, the air between them shimmered with unspoken things. "You don't have to come," he said. Ava snorted. "And let you walk into a possible ambush without me? Not likely." He gave a soft huff of amusement. "You're stubborn. You're surprised." "No," he said, "I'm grateful." Before they departed, Rowan placed a hand on Elder Viren's shoulder. "If we don't return, you will," the old man said firmly, "or we will come." Rowan nodded, and they vanished into the trees. The journey to the Salt Lake took half a day. The terrain was rougher than Ava remembered, trees uprooted from the quake, soil torn where rock had split. The air felt charged, like the forest was holding its breath. When they crested the final rise, the lake came into view. It stretched like a sheet of silver glass, cracked and frozen at the edges. And at its far end, built into the cliffside, stood the archway, not just stone but carved with ancient symbols glowing faintly even in daylight. A breeze rolled out from it, dampened metallic. And there, already waiting, stood Calvik. He was not alone. At least 20 Bear Clan warriors flanked him, some on foot, others with trained animals, foxes, crows, a black bear sniffing the air. Rowan's voice was low. "We stand. No fear." Ava drew in a breath. "Let me speak first." They walked forward, not rushing, not hesitating. Rowan at her side, Damon just behind. The Bear Clan watched them with eyes narrowed, flutes clutched like weapons, their breath steaming in the cold air. Calvik stepped forward. "I wondered if you'd come." Ava didn't smile. "You lit the trees. I woke the gate," he said simply. "The world should see what lies beneath its bounds." Rowan's hand twitched near his blade. Ava stepped between them. "Then let's see it. Together." Calvik tilted his head. "Are you ready for what it shows?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm here anyway." Calvik's eyes glinted, and the gate pulsed. The gate was breathing. That was Ava's first impression as she stepped closer. The wind that poured from the archway wasn't constant. It pulsed like a deep exhale followed by silence, then another, rhythmic, ancient, alive. Calvik stood with his hand raised, not to stop them, but as if sensing something in the air. "It wakes differently for each of us." Rowan kept his hand near his blade. "Then we won't linger." The archway itself was taller than she remembered, 3 meters at least. Smooth stone on the outside, but within the arch's curve, the surface shimmered like mist wrapped in moonlight. Symbols carved into the pillars were not just decorative. They glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the gate's breath. Ava stepped toward it, the earth cold beneath her boots. Her pulse thudded against her ribs. "Your mother drew this," she whispered to Rowan. "She must have stood here." Rowan nodded, but his jaw was tight. "And she never returned." Calvik approached, arms behind his back. "She chose to remain. Some do. Some do not belong in either world." Ava turned to him. "And what is it?" "A portal. A time scar. A fracture. A door," Calvik said, "to another shape of truth." Rowan scoffed. "Poetry won't keep it closed." Calvik's gaze flicked to him, sharp. "Neither will your steel." The Bear Clan leader stepped aside, gesturing to the gate. "You wanted understanding. Step through, see for yourself." The wolfkin behind Rowan growled low. Damon tightened his grip on his blade. Tension crackled like dry wood ready to snap. Ava looked at Rowan. "We came to learn. We can't stop this with guesswork." "I won't let you go alone," he said. "I know," she said softly, "but you may have to." Rowan reached into his coat and handed her something, his mother's journal. A page carefully torn from the binding. "Read if you get lost." Ava nodded. Then she stepped forward. The shimmer pulled at her like wind across a lake. She inhaled deeply, closed her eyes and walked into the gate. It was like falling through breath. Not air, not water, something else. Every hair on her body lifted. Her skin tingled as if tiny needles pressed gently against her. For one terrifying second, there was nothing, no ground, no sky, no self. Then she landed. Hard, the world around her was silent. She opened her eyes and gasped. She stood on a plain of black stone, smooth and endless. A sky of deep violet stretched above, filled with constellations she had never seen. The stars pulsed faintly, as if watching. In the distance, shapes moved slow and immense, like mountains walking across the horizon. But it was the structure behind her that made her breath catch. A mirror of the gate, larger, crystalline, fractured like obsidian but pulsing with the same rhythm. It had a heart, and within it, for a brief moment, she saw a silhouette. A woman, tall, hair braided in loops around her shoulders, journal in hand. Rowan's mother. Ava stumbled forward. Wait, but the vision shimmered and faded. Behind her, the gate pulsed again. She had no way to know how long she could stay here or if this world even measured time the way hers did. But she had a purpose. She knelt on the ground, opened the torn journal page, and pressed it to the black stone. The ink glowed faintly. A message. Not for her but for Rowan. His mother had left something behind. On the other side of the gate, Rowan waited, his hands clenched at his sides, every instinct screaming at him to follow. But Calvi stood calmly nearby, expression unreadable. She may not return the same, the bear leader said. I don't care. Calvi raised a brow. Then you are more like her than you realize. Before Rowan could reply, the gate shimmered brighter, faster. Then Ava emerged, stumbling, her hair loose and windswept, eyes wide. She fell to her knees. Rowan was beside her in a heartbeat, steadying her with both hands. You came back, he breathed. I always would, she whispered, throat dry. He helped her sit, brushing snow from her shoulders. What did you see? Another place, she said. Another sky. Another kind of silence. She handed him the page, now warm and glowing. From your mother. Rowan's fingers trembled as he took it. Calvi leaned in. And now you understand. Ava met his eyes. I understand that you fear the future. And you? I respect it, she said, but I won't let it consume this one. Calvi's smile faded. Then we are on different sides. Rowan rose, journal page tucked close. Then we stand where we must. Calvi looked between them, then turned and walked back toward his people. No war horn was blown, no weapons raised, but the bear clan faded into the trees with the kind of silence that warned of storms not yet begun. That night, the gate was sealed again, not broken, never destroyed but veiled. Rowan and Ava placed pine ash and earth in the grooves, painted the wolf spiral over its face, and sang the words Lena had taught them in old tongue, meaning stay quiet, stay safe, stay whole. When it was done, Ava slumped beside the fire, exhausted. Rowan joined her. He unrolled the journal page, studying it. She was watching, not lost. She made a choice, Ava said. The same one you would have made. Rowan nodded. And you? She looked at the stars above. I think I'm still choosing. He took her hand. Then choose here, tonight. Ava smiled. Undid. Chapter 7 Winter's Teeth. Winter descended with teeth. What began as powdery snow flurries turned into biting winds and blinding storms. The grim Reach Range groaned beneath its icy weight, rivers froze solid, hunting trails vanished, and even the wolves huddled closer to the fire. In the Wolfkin village, every breath hung in the air like a ghost. Ava had never known cold like this. Not the city chill where you turned up a radiator and waited for spring, but the kind that sank into your marrow and made your thoughts sluggish. She spent most days indoors helping Lena dry roots, patch furs and ration food. At night, she lay beside Rowan, tucked beneath heavy pelts, his body heat the only shield against the wind that clawed at the tent walls. Despite the cold, she had never felt more alive. Outside, the village moved with purpose. Children gathered snow for boiling. Warriors hunted in groups, silent and swift. Fires were fed constantly, not for comfort, but for survival. And each morning, before the sun rose, Rowan went to the ridge to watch the eastern pass. Ava finally asked why. She came that way, he said, without turning. My mother. Once. Long ago. Ava stepped beside him, the snow crunching under her boots. You think someone might follow her? Rowan nodded. Not her, but others. Those who dreamed too much. She understood what he meant. Ever since they returned from the gate, something in the air had changed, not just in the Wolfkin camp, but in the forest itself. Trees creaked like they whispered secrets. Ice patterns on the tents resembled spirals she swore she hadn't seen the day before. Even the wolves, those who still walked on for legs, howled differently, longer, lower, like calling something back. Something had been woken. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a dead elk. Not unusual in the wild, predators fed, and snow claimed the weak. But this one had no bite marks, no broken bones, only ash at its hooves. Ava and Damon found it during a firewood run beyond the southern ridge. The elk lay sprawled across a field of brittle grass, its eyes wide open, its body covered in fine white powder. Ava knelt beside it. It looks like it was burned, from the inside. Damon grunted, sniffed the air. No smoke, no predators, just death. He turned to her. We should go back. Back at the village, Elder Viren examined the carcass in silence, his fingers running across the brittle fur. Salt fire, he said finally. Rowan frowned. A myth. Not anymore, the elder murmured. Long ago, The earthfolk spoke of it, a sickness that burned like silence, left no sound, no trace, only ash. Ava shivered. And it comes from the gate? Viren looked at her. Or from what tried to follow you back? The tent grew quiet. Rowan stood, jaw tight. If it is sickness, we will stop it. If it is creature, we will hunt it. Ava watched him carefully. And if it's neither? He looked at her then. Then we light a bigger fire. That night, Ava couldn't sleep. She slipped out from the furs, wrapped herself in her cloak and stepped into the snow. The village was still, no wind, no wolves, just stars blinking in the black sky. She walked to the central fire, its embers glowing faintly. A figure sat on a log nearby, head bowed. Damon. She joined him silently. He handed her a cup of broth without looking. You're thinking again. Always. What's the thought tonight? Ava stared into the fire. What if I brought something back with me? Damon said nothing. She continued. What if the gate didn't just open, but let something through? Something we didn't see. You think it wears ash like a cloak? I think it wears curiosity. And we open the door. Dame unsipped his drink. Then we fight, like we always do. Ava turned to him. Do you ever wish you hadn't stayed? He met her eyes. You make it easy to stay. She smiled faintly. You always say things like that when I least expect it. And you always expect me not to care. Ava laughed softly. Touche. By morning, another body was found. Not an elk this time. A wolfkin scout wren, young and sharp-eyed, was discovered by the creek, skin pale, mouth open, no sign of a struggle, only ash on his fingers. Rowan stood over the body in silence. Ava watched the rage build behind his stillness. Damon crouched beside the corpse, shaking his head. Too clean, he muttered. No wounds, no sign of magic, no smell. Ava Elton examined Wren's hands. The ash wasn't just powder, it glittered faintly. Unnatural. It's not just death, she whispered. It's transformation. Rowan looked up. Explain. Ava rubbed her fingers together, then frowned. Whatever this is, it doesn't just kill. It changes. Strips something away. Viren arrived, leaning heavily on his staff. He stared at Wren's body and said, This is a warning. Rowan turned to him. Then we listen. Viren nodded. Gather the seers. We need firelight and memory. Ava looked at Rowan. What will you do? His gaze turned north. I'll find what left the ashes. By dusk the wind had changed. It carried a scent Ava couldn't place, sharp, electric, like struck flint and drain and bone. The village huddled close around its fires, elders muttering in the old tongue, warriors oiling their blades in silence. Ava sat with Lena in the weaving tent, hands fumbling over half-finished wolf pelt wraps. Her thoughts weren't on thread or patterns. They were with Rowan. He had left with Damon hours ago, following the ridgeline toward the creek where Wren had been found. No word yet. No signal. He's strong, Lena said suddenly, as if plucking the thought straight from Ava's head. I know. Ava replied. But even stone can crack. Lena reached over and squeezed her hand. He's not stone when you're near. Ava's chest tightened. That's what scares me. Outside, a low howl cut through the night. Then another. Then silence. The kind of silence that didn't settle but crouched, waiting. Rowan knelt by a twisted tree near the edge of the creek bed. The snow here was thin, windswept, revealing mud laced with strange prints, shallow depressions with no toe marks, no claws, just impressions. As if something had floated, not walked. Damon crouched beside him. I don't like this. Rowan nodded. It doesn't hunt like animal. They moved along the bank, weapons drawn, ears sharp. The moon above was Hafton Reed, its light casting everything in muted rust. The water was frozen solid, but a crack ran along its center, black as ink. Then they found the third body. Not wolfkin, not bear clan. A man, modern, metal flashlight still clutched in his hand. Blake's missing partner. Rowan rolled the body gently, grimacing. The man's face was frozen mid-scream, his features desiccated, skin paper thin and dry like flaked bark. No blood, just dust. Damon stepped back. Ava was right. This didn't kill him. Rowan looked up. It took something. Back in the village, Ava stared at the stranger's photo found folded in Blake's notebook. His name had been Michael Reed, a tracker, a decent man. Now just another silent corpse. She met with Elder Viren and the seers near the central fire. They'd drawn a memory circle in the ash spirals of coal and carved bone, herbs burning at each point. Ava sat at its edge, gripping the torn page from Rowan's mother's journal. She called it unshaping, Ava said, voice tight. Not death, something older, something that doesn't feed, it erases. One of the seers, A woman with a voice like snowmelt murmured, "This is the ghost of the gate." Another added, "It passed through her and waits." Ava looked at them, fear blooming behind her ribs. "So it didn't follow me?" "No," Viren said grimly. "It always lived here. The gate just reminded it to wake." Rowan returned near midnight, covered in frost, jaw set like stone. Ava met him before he even reached the main fire. "You found him?" Rowan nodded. "Blake's man." "Hello." Her stomach clenched. "And you saw signs?" He nodded again. Snow melted in a perfect circle. Sound faded. Even Damon felt it. Something watched. Ava touched his arm. "And you?" He met her eyes. "It didn't come close." "Why not?" He was quiet a long moment, then said, "Maybe because it knew I would follow." That night, Rowan stayed close to her. They lay beneath pelts, the fire low but steady, his hand curled lightly against her hip. Ava listened to the wind pressing against the tent walls, her thoughts a storm of spirals. "Do you think your mother knew it was here?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "She stayed anyway. She believed this world needed watchers." Ava turned her face to his chest. "And now we watch." He kissed the top of her head. "Until the end." But the end was already beginning. In the early hours of morning, a scream tore through the village. Not pain, a warning. Ava bolted upright as Rowan was already reaching for his blade. Outside, flames crackled. One of the supply tents had caught fire. People shouted, darted through snow and smoke. Ice hissed as fire met frost. Damon appeared at the entrance. Something moved in the ash tent, knocked over the oil barrel. Ava pulled on her boots, heart thudding. "Did anyone see it?" "No," Damon said, but the cold dropped. Even inside the fire circle, she stepped into the smoke with Rowan beside her. The flames were under control now. Lena and two others pouring snow over the collapsed canvas, charred supplies hissing beneath the weight. Ava moved to the center of the scorched circle. There, untouched by the flame, lay a perfect spiral in the ash. She knelt beside it, breath clouding. Her hand hovered over it, not drawn by hand, pressed, like a fingerprint in dust. Rowan crouched beside her, eyes dark. "It passed through," Ava whispered, or stopped to watch. Later, in the quiet before dawn, Ava sat alone by the fire, the journal in her lap. She read the final entry aloud, voice barely above the crackle of flame. "If you're reading this, you've seen what I have. The gate does not ask permission. It opens for those with questions in their hearts, and behind it lies not just power, but memory. Things that do not forget, or forgive. Be brave, but not blind. Some stories are written in ash for a reason." Ava folded the page and stared into the flames where shadows flickered like watching eyes. Chapter 8. Bonds forged in frost. The next morning broke in streaks of blood-colored light across the snow. Ava stood on the ridge, her cloak pulled tight, hair tangled by the wind. Below her, the village moved in near silence. Every step was purposeful, every glance was wary. A single spiral pressed into the ash-den floor had shifted everything. The seers called it an omen. Rowan called it a warning. Damon called it a hunt waiting to happen. Ava wasn't sure what to call it, but she knew what it felt like, something watching from the edges of what they could name. Rowan approached from behind, quiet as always, his breath fogged near her ear. "They want to prepare defenses." She turned slightly. "Viren," he nodded. "And the High Mount. A runner was sent this morning." Ava blinked. "You think they'll answer?" "Only if they believe it threatens them too." She rubbed her arms. "And if they don't?" Rowan's jaw worked. "Then we stand alone." That afternoon, Ava helped Lena pack supplies into woven satchels, herbs, poultices, smoked meat, flint bundles. Everything was being rationed again. But this time, not for winter, for war. "Not everyone wants to fight," Lena said quietly, wrapping twine around a fur bundle. Ava sat beside her, checking her satchel. "Not everyone understands what we're fighting." Lena looked up. "Do you?" Ava thought about the spiral, the bodies, the frost-lined silence that stalked the woods like a sentinel's predator. "No," she admitted, "but I know we can't wait." Lena smiled sadly. "You speak like Rowan now." Ava returned it. "Maybe I've learned something." By nightfall, fires burned higher, not for warmth but to push the dark back farther. Rowan stood before the assembled warriors, Damon beside him, Viren seated with the elders, and Ava behind him, her boots planted in the packed snow. The wind whipped at the flames, but they held. "We do not know its name," Rowan began, voice loud and sure. "Only its pattern." Ash silence. Fear. The warriors said nothing. "It moves when we do not. It waits where we do not see. It touches what we do not guard." A murmur. Rowan turned, looked directly at Ava. But it fears fire. She stepped forward, lifting the pouch of smoke bombs and pitch glazed cloth she'd helped prepare. We fight it the way we fight hunger, she said. With hands, with heat, with each other. A woman in the back raised a hand. And if it is not a beast, Ava met her eyes, then we fight to remind it we are not prey. A silence followed. Then Daemon raised his axe. I'll follow, he said, not for glory, for home. Others nodded. One by one, hands lifted, eyes sharpened. Viren's voice cracked across the cold. Then tomorrow we hunt. Later, as snow began to fall again, Rowan and Ava walked the perimeter of the village together. Torches glowed along the borders, crackling low and steady. Above, the moon was veiled by clouds, its light smudged and uncertain. You were born for this, Rowan said quietly, watching her from the corner of his eye. Ava gave a dry laugh. I was born to run an inn. Then life made a wrong turn. Or the right one. They stopped near the tall pine where they'd first spoken under moonlight, the spot where he'd given her the lighter, where their story had begun in fractured gestures and half-spoken trust. She turned to face him. I'm scared, Rowan. He nodded. So am I, but I'm not leaving. I know. He stepped closer, brushing snow from her collar, fingers lingering there. I thought love would feel like a fever, he said, like heat and fire and burning. It doesn't. No, he whispered. It feels like standing beside someone in the cold, and not needing to be warm. Ava's throat tightened. I love you, he said. She looked up at him, voice trembling. I know. I've known. Then she kissed him. Not like a farewell, like a tether. The first scream shattered the quiet just after midnight. Ava sat up in the dark, her hand instinctively reaching for the bone-hilted blade Rowan had left within her reach. Outside, feet pounded through snow. Voices called out sharp, panicked, short-lived. She flung the furs aside and rushed out, boots crunching over frost. Smoke. It wasn't the clean smoke of firewood or hearts. It was thick, saw burnt flesh and wet moss, something unnatural. Lena sprinted past her. The southern line. Something came through the traps. Ava followed, her heart beating hard against her ribs, lungs already aching in the cold. By the time she reached the clearing, the snow was disturbed, kicked up by many feet, some of them dragging. One of the torch posts was snapped in half. The perimeter alarm, a simple bell of bone and copper, clanged uselessly against the ground. Rowan stood in the center, his face pale in the firelight. Two are missing, Ra'en and Dilor. Daemon appeared, blood on his sleeve. I saw it. What did you see? Ava demanded. He shook his head. Not it. Not clearly. Just absence. Like the fire bent away. It moved without moving. Rowan knelt and pointed at the snow. Ash spirals. Not drawn. Branded. Ava dropped to her knees beside him, tracing the still glowing edge of one. It's trying to tell us something. No, Rowan said. It's trying to learn. She looked up sharply. You mean it's thinking? Rowan met her gaze. It's waiting to become more. By morning, the missing were not found. No tracks. No sound. No bodies. Only the spirals. One in each corner of the camp. Perfect. Burned. The seers huddled near the central fire, casting bones, whispering in tongues even Viren didn't recognize. The air was thick with herbs and dread. Lena painted protective wards in white chalk across the doorposts. Ava helped where she could, hands steady, mind spinning. She couldn't stop seeing the look on Rowan's face. Not fear, grief. Like he was preparing for the world to end slowly. That afternoon, a runner returned from the Heimat. He was bloodied, limping, alone. Ava rushed to meet him, helping lower him into the snow. Speak, Rowan commanded, crouched beside him. The runner coughed, lips pale. Heimat burned. South slope. Ash, not fire, not wind. Just gone. Ava gripped his hand. Did any survive? He nodded weakly. Some fled to Earthfolk territory. Earthfolk? Daemon echoed. They fear the gate, Rowan said. Always have. Ava's voice was soft. Because they saw it once. The runner's eyes fluttered. They said, it walks now. At nightfall, the earth shuddered. It wasn't a quake, Ava knew those now. This was softer, a breath beneath the snow. The entire forest inhaling and holding. Everyone felt it. Even the children cried silently. Rowan stood on the ridge, staring northward. Ava joined him. You feel it too, she said. He nodded. It's coming. She touched the lighter hanging around her neck, a gift now as much as a weapon. Then we meet it on our terms. Rowan turned to her. We can't win. Not as we are. Ava's throat closed. Then we change. In the longhouse, she addressed the village. I've seen your strength, she said. I've lived your winters. I've learned your fire. She stepped forward. But this thing, this unshaping, it doesn't fear blades or stone. It feeds on weakness, silence, separation. Lena stood beside her, eyes wide, nodding. So we won't face it as tribe and outsider, as wolf kin, or bear, or earth folk. We face it as one. Viren growled. You would ask us to unite. I don't ask, Ava said. I lead. She looked to Rowan. I can open the gate again. Not to run but to pull the fire forward. Rowan stepped to her side. Then we follow. One by one, hands lifted, and then hearts. They returned to the gate that night, not to flee, to summon. Ava stood before the stone arch, the snow swirling around her like a veil. She held Rowan's mother's journal in one hand, the lighter in the other. Rowan, Damon, and Lena stood behind her. Damon carried to smoked orchards. Lena held bundles of dried herbs and salt. Ava struck the lighter. The flame caught, small and gold. She read aloud the words from the final page, half spell, half memory. I came not to conquer, but to remain. May the world I found become the world I protect. The gate shuddered. A pulse. Then a light low and silver rippled across its surface. A wind poured through, not hostile this time, but cold with recognition. And somewhere in the distance beyond the reach of trees, the unshaping stirred, watching, listening, becoming. Chapter 9. The Fire Remembers. Ava did not sleep that night. No one did. The gate shimmered with a light that did not belong to this world, neither sun nor moon nor fire. It pulsed in time with her breath, as if recognizing her, listening with her. Cold, silver blue waves rippled out from the archway, frosting the nearby pine boughs with delicate, crystalline webs that pulsed once and faded. The wolfkin stood in a wide circle around it, weapons drawn but lowered. No one spoke. Even the wolves remained silent. Ava stepped forward, lighter in hand, and faced the glowing threshold. It's listening. Rowan's voice was low beside her. Then speak. She didn't know where the words came from. Maybe the journal. Maybe instinct. Maybe the long-forgotten memory of fire stories told in dark rooms when she was a child. She said loud and steady, I am Ava Langley. I came here by accident, but I remain by choice. A wind hissed across the snow. I stand with the people of this land, not above, not beyond, but beside. I call you, fire, not to destroy but to remember. Burn not what lives, but what unravels. The gate flickered, then blazed. The flame surged not outward but inward, illuminating the spirals carved into the stone. The lines glowed gold now, no longer silver. And from within, the light formed a shape, a burning wolf, translucent and vast, its eyes endless as the night. Gasps echoed around her. Even Rowan froze. The wolf paced forward, its paws leaving no prints, only warmth. It circled Ava once, then raised its head to the stars and howled no sound, only the pure vibration of flame. Then it turned toward the north, toward the thing that hunted them, and ran, into the trees. Rowan exhaled. The fire heard you. Ava dropped to one knee, drained but whole. Then we give it a path. By sunrise, the village was moving. Lines of warriors loaded bundles of pitch-sapped orchards and ash bombs. Seers packed fire chalk and herbs. Damon coordinated a ring of runners, one for each clan willing to answer. Word came from the earthfolk by midday. They would stand. They had seen the ice-powdered lands and spirals near the salt lake and knew now that silence would not protect them. From the high mount no reply. But Rowan said quietly, they do not speak, they act. That afternoon, Ava stood before the gate once more, flanked by Rowan and Damon. We follow the fire, she said. We find it. We bind it. Rowan nodded. We end it. Lena stepped forward, handing Ava a bundle wrapped in reed cloth. The last park-route, from my mother's bundle. Ava accepted it with a tight smile. Thank you. Then they moved Norn trees, beneath skies streaked with cloud and ash. The forest opened to them, not in welcome, in warning. They found the first sign near a cliff pass, a pine tree, 20 feet tall, burned from within. Not blackened, not charred, hollow, still standing. Ava pressed her hand to it. Warm, beating faintly, like a heart. Rowan pulled her back. It waits inside things. Damon circled the tree. It's learning, taking shapes. Further north they found more, a half-eaten deer turned to salt. A fox curled in a sleeping pose, unmoving eyes open, mouth frozen mid-yawn, body cold as stone. Lena whispered, they never ran. Ava's chest tightened. They didn't see it coming. By evening, they reached the broken field. A place of scattered stone and shallow ice basins once used by the Bear clan for rituals, now abandoned. The ground was marked with spirals, hundreds of them overlapping, imperfect, frantic. Rowan crouched, tracing one with his glove. These weren't drawn. Ava nodded. They were stamped, rapidly, like panic. Damon pointed to the hill beyond. Smoke, and spirals, pulsing now, alive. It's there. They approached in silence, torches lit but low, eyes scanning every shadow. At the crest of the hill stood a shape. Not a person. Not fully. It wore the outline of a man, but its features flickered, melting between forms. Sometimes young, sometimes old, sometimes face, sometimes mask. Spirals flowed across its skin like oil, like vines. It turned. No eyes. Only spirals. Ava stepped forward, torch trembling in her hand. "We see you." It didn't speak, but the air around them grew still. Then it raised its hand, not in peace, in mimicry, and all around the field, spirals in the snow began to burn. One by one, Rowan pulled Ava back. "It's testing us." Damon lifted his smoke bomb. "Let's give it answers." Ava nodded, and lit the fire. The first bomb hit with a soft whoomp, releasing a cloud of bitter smoke that clung to the ground like fog. Damon threw another, and another, encircling the burning spirals in thick haze. The creature didn't move, only turned its flickering head as if tasting the smoke, curious rather than alarmed. Its outline shimmered man, then beast, then void. Each form lasted seconds, breaking down before it could solidify. Ava's torch burned hot in her hand. "Now," Rowan said. He and Ava moved in tandem, flanking the creature from either side. Lena and the others followed with firelit spears, forming a wide crescent to corner it against the icy basin below. Still, the thing did not run. Instead, it opened its arms, and laughed, not with sound, but with silence so sharp it hurt. Ava stumbled. The laughter pressed behind her eyes, filled her mouth, tightened her throat. She couldn't speak, couldn't scream, only feel despair, loneliness, hunger. She dropped to her knees, torch slipping from her fingers into the snow. Rowan caught her before she hit the ground. Ava, look at me." His voice was the only thing clear in the fog, the only tether. She gasped. "It feeds on feeling. I won't let it take yours." He pressed the spiral medallion to her chest, the one she'd worn since her second day in the village. It burned, but it burned clean. Ava blinked once, twice, and the silence cracked. Her voice came back in a single, sharp breath. "Strike it now." Damon hurled the final smoke bomb directly at the creature's feet. The explosion knocked it back, disrupting its shifting form. It tumbled, its outline blurring, melting into static shapes like a shattered mirror trying to reform. Lena chanted low and fast, her hands scattering a mixture of salt, ash, and crushed sparkroot across the ground. The smoke caught the herbs caught the spirals, and the field burned gold. The spirals flared like constellations, and the creature let out a sound for the first time, somewhere between a snarl and a cry, like wind through splintered bone. Ava picked up her torch, lips bloodied from biting them shut. "Listen to me," she said, stepping closer. "You do not belong here." The creature turned toward her, its mask forming into a mimic of her own face, twisted and smoking. "I am not afraid of you," she said. Rowan stood beside her now, blade unsheathed, burning bright with fire oil. "You tried to erase us," he said, "but we remember." They struck as one. Ava's torch met the creature's shoulder, igniting its spiral markings like dry kindling. Rowan's blade sliced through its side, not flesh, but form, and the thing collapsed backward, caught in a ring of fire and memory. It screeched not with rage but with confusion, as though it didn't understand what was happening to it. Ava stepped into the circle. "We know your shape now." She threw the lighter, Rowan's gift, her own relic, into the center of its chest. The flame caught, the creature shrieked, and vanished into ash. Silence fell, real silence, not the smothering kind, just stillness, then wind, then breath. The fire flickered low, and the spirals did not return. Back at the village, the fires were kept burning for 3 nights, not for fear, for tradition. Ava stood with Rowan near the central hearth, her hands outstretched, palms blackened with soot. She had not wept, not yet, but her body ached with the weight of what she had seen, what she had done. "They'll come," Rowan said quietly, "from the Earth folk, from Highmount, even Bear clan, to honor, to learn," he said, "and to ask what fire remembers." Ava nodded. "Will you tell them?" Rowan looked at her. "We will." Later that night, Lena brought her a cup of bark tea and sat beside her, You saw its true form. Ava shook her head. No, I saw what it wanted me to see. Then what did it want? Ava stared into the cup. To be everything, and nothing. It didn't want to be seen, just swallowed. Lena took her hand. But you burned it. No, Ava said quietly. We remembered something it couldn't, who we are. Rowan found her outside the tent, watching the first snowfall after the battle. It fell slowly, gently, without fear. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. You're quiet. I'm thinking. Dangerous, he teased. She smiled faintly. I keep wondering what if it wasn't the only one. Rowan was quiet, then said, then we stand again. And again. And again. She leaned into him, head against his shoulder. I'm not the same person who fell into this world, she whispered. No, he said. You're the one who chose to stay. Ava turned and kissed him in the snow. Not for victory, but for everything that came after. Chapter 10. A World Between Worlds. Spring didn't arrive in the grim reach with a burst of color. It crept in on softened snow, on meltwater streams threading their way through pine needles and stone. The sky lightened day by day, the sun showing its face longer, stronger. Green peeked out cautiously from beneath frostbitten earth. Life resumed, but not as it was. Ava walked through the village barefoot that morning, the chill kissing her skin. Her coat was lighter now, a cloak lined in woven wolf fur stitched by Lena's own hands. She passed the fire ring, smaller these days but burning still. Children played nearby, drawing spirals in soot, not in fear anymore but in memory. Everything had changed. And yet, everything remained. She bent down to help a small boy knot together 2 strands of pine cord. He offered her a gap-toothed grin, holding up the finished loop like it was treasure. Good job, she whispered, brushing ash from his cheek. Behind her, Rowan approached silently. She felt him before she saw him. His presence always arrived first, like the wind before a storm or the moment just before a torch is struck. You're barefoot, he said, voice low, amused. I want to feel the ground again. He stood beside her, still, afraid of leaving. Ava's smile faded, softening into something more complex. No, just afraid of forgetting. Rowan said nothing, but his hand found hers. They met with the earth folk at dusk. The small-bodied people emerged from the salt caves in silent procession, their faces painted in gentle pastels, their voices humming a song Ava didn't know but somehow understood. It was a welcoming tune, one layered in grief and renewal. Their elder Tamay, a woman no taller than Ava's ribs but with a presence vast as the mountains, stood before Rowan and Ava with outstretched hands. You closed the mouth of silence, she said, and fed it flame. We remembered, Ava replied, using their words. Tam-A bowed. Then you may remain. Damon, standing just behind Rowan, let out a short breath. Well, that's a better reaction than I expected. Lena elbowed him. They like Ava. They trust her, Rowan corrected. And you? Ava asked Tam-A. The elder's small eyes glinted like pebbles in moonlight. I see fire in both of you. Not because you burn, but because you stay warm long after. That night, after the earth folk left offerings at the gate stones wrapped in fur, feathers dipped in ash, Ava sat at its edge, watching the wind ripple across its surface. The gate no longer shimmered. It slept, closed but not forgotten. Rowan joined her in silence. You could open it again, he said. Ava nodded. Yes, you could leave. Go back to the world where fire is made of wires and noise. I've thought about it. He didn't speak, didn't flinch. I go back for one reason, she continued. To close it from the other side. Rowan looked at her. And? I don't need to anymore. He exhaled slowly. Then what will you do? Ava turned to him. Stay. She touched the gate's stone. But not just in this village. Not just by your side. I want to walk the whole range. Visit the Bear clan again. Speak with the High Mount if they'll have me. Learn. Teach. And when the next fire comes, she looked at him. I'll be ready. Rowan brought her a gift the next morning, a knife carved from obsidian and antler, the hilt engraved with a single spiral, but broken at one edge. A reminder, he said, that even what's cracked can still cut deep. Ava kissed his knuckles. Poetic. He shrugged. I've been around you too long. She strapped the knife to her hip beside her fire pouch. Good, because you're coming with me. He raised an eyebrow. Where? To find the mountain gate's twin. His smile was slow, wolfish. So we're starting trouble. No, she said, looping her arm through his. We're carrying stories. By mid-morning, they departed. Damon gave her a sack of dried fish and a reluctant hug. Lena cried, of course, and made Ava promise to return before the snow fell again. Veer, in his hair now pure white, his cane once more a carved spear, nodded at her and said, You're not one of us. Ava stiffened slightly. But you're not apart from us either, he continued. You were something between, something the wilds haven't named yet. She bowed her head. I'll try to live up to that, he snorted. Try to survive first. Rowan and Ava walked north again, this time without dread. The land seemed to breathe easier now, the air clear, the trees quieter. At night, they camped beside ancient stones and listened to the wolves howl in the far hills. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. But once, while staring at the stars, Ava said, "When I was a girl, I used to think love would be a lightning strike." Rowan rolled onto his side to face her. "And now," she turned toward him, "now I know it's a hearth." His fingers found hers in the dark. "Then we keep it burning." 3 weeks later, Ava stood at the mouth of a mountain cave with Rowan at her side. Before them the farthest northern ridge of the Grim Reach Range, where the clouds scraped the peaks and wind sang through ancient stone like breath through bone flutes. The cave was narrow, wound with lichen and lined with faded carving spirals, wolves, stars, gates. A cold draft whispered through the stones, carrying the scent of salt and memory. "This is it," Ava said. Rowan ran a hand along the wall. "You sure?" She nodded, holding up a scrap of her journal, a drawing from Rowan's mother, found hidden beneath the last page. The arch, the cliffs, the spiral etched over ice. "The twin to the first gate," she said. "The one that wasn't found. Until now." Rowan didn't answer. He just watched her, eyes quiet and deep. Ava stepped forward, past the stone threshold. Nothing shimmered, nothing pulsed, just air, damp, still. Rowan followed. The cave narrowed, then opened again into a bowl-shaped chamber layered with glistening ice. At the far end stood a stone arch half collapsed. Vines crawled across its face. Moss grew from its cracks. But it was the carvings that made Ava stop breathing. A wolf, a woman, a spiral split into, and above it, written in a trembling hand, "If I could have returned, I would have." Ava touched the stone. "She tried," Rowan said, reading over her shoulder. "She couldn't," Ava whispered. "She chose to stay." Ava turned to face him. "I think I finally understand her." Rowan stepped closer. "Say it." "She found peace here," Ava said. "Not in the wildness, not in the survival, but in the belonging, in choosing to live without needing to escape." Rowan gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "And you?" Ava smiled. "I choose the same." They didn't open the gate, they sealed it. Together, they carved a single spiral across the base stone and filled it with herbs, ash, and a drop of Rowan's blood. A pact to keep the gate closed unless the world needed it again, not out of fear, but out of respect. Ava lit it with her lighter, the flame small and flickering, then pressed the device into the crack between stones. It hissed, flared, and went dark. When they returned to the Wolfkin, the trees were already budding. The village had changed again, not in shape, but in feel. A sense of balance had returned. Children no longer watched the tree line as if it whispered danger. Songs were sung again around the fire at dusk. Spiral symbols were painted on homes not as warnings, but as protection, as lineage. Lena met them at the fire with tears and salt bread. Damon clapped Rowan on the back and handed Ava a pouch of river stones shaped like hearts. "You missed spring blessing," he said. "We brought our own," Rowan replied. Ava grinned. "Yours is prettier." In the weeks that followed, Ava built her own space just beyond the northern slope. A low stone cabin nestled between pines, close enough to hear the village howl at moonrise but far enough for quiet mornings. Rowan helped her shape the hearth, carving wolf spirals into the lintel beam, lining the walls with fur and salvaged hides. Her garden was small roots, wild greens, sweet potato shoots from bare clan stock. She bartered knowledge, stories, warmth. She taught the earth folk how to preserve snowmalt in sunstone jars. She received in return a carved flute and a song for safe journeys. At night, she wrote in a new journal, one stitched by hand, its cover wrapped in bark and soft leather. She titled it Between Worlds. One evening, as the sun slipped low and the forest hummed with soft life, Ava and Rowan lay under a canopy of branches strung with wind chimes made of bone and river glass. He traced shapes on her palm spiral: star, wolf, fire. "You ever miss the old world?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said honestly, "but not the parts that made me small." He nodded. "And if it called to you again?" "I wouldn't answer," she said, turning toward him. "Not without you." He kissed her slow, steady like flame coaxing warmth from stone. Sometime later, she stood again beneath the gate, not to open it, just to stand in the memory of it. She whispered a quiet thanks to the woman who had once crossed over, who had built a home of ashen light and taught her son how to love like the forest, fierce, wild, and without apology. Eva placed her hand on the stone and closed her eyes, then she turned and walked back toward the fire. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and subscribe for more beautiful tales. Tap the next thumbnail to continue your journey.